Here's a quick video of a couple of things I wanted to get on the record. I'm going to do it fast. I mean, somebody can make a better film of it, but here are the basic ideas. I took some pictures of the bookshelves of the psychology and sociology sections on the third floor of the Harvard Coop the other day. It was a place I used to go just to see if anything that we did ever made it into print. I never found anything. I didn't find anything there when I took the pictures. Before I did that, I used to go in there and go check to see if they did any useful work on things like the psychology of money, the psychology of gold, the psychology of diamonds. It went on and on and on. There's a whole long list of very simple things that are part of everybody's life that they never really did any serious research into. And I'm not really surprised. I mean, basically it's a drug in everybody's mentally ill culture. And the kinds of things we were looking for were actually, keys to the curative aspects of civilization, rather than the stuff that decimates it in the name of, not profits, of course, but caring. About 15 years ago, we began some research into trying to explain how it's possible that people do what they do in the environments that they find themselves in when the prima facie belies what it is their narrative is. They're great at doing same old, even when the situation completely changes. So we started looking into various forms of logic. We found out basically that the brain is a linguistic processor. And after, probably about 6 months worth of work, it finally occurred to me that we weren't really primitive enough in our understanding of what the psychology was. So we started looking at ancient stuff. Came up with the idea that maybe what we really needed to do was look at the turning points in history as, and not all of them, but the major ones on what we call the bright line, as being important milestones in human cognitive development. It's much better than looking at MRI pretty charts and trying to explain how gray, gooey stuff that couldn't do anything could ever end up with any kind of predictive model. We did it linguistically. And I had a lab in Boston and was in the field, and hang on a second. So we started looking at the bright line. One was Egypt. We looked at Egypt. We ignored Babylon, and that one came up later because we were really looking at what had happened in Tyre. That was about 3,700 years ago. Egypt was anywhere from, 7,000 years ago to 4,000 years ago. And then we looked at Rome. We looked a little bit at Greece, but that really wasn't interesting from a psychosocial standpoint. We can explain that some other time. But Rome was a turning point, and so was the Renaissance. There were some things added to psychology it would go through. But we really focused initially on the primitive because it explained things like, we can get into it in further detail someday if I get to survive that long. We'll be looking at things like track slots, like absurd logic, liar logic, which is actually systematized. And if you look at the brain in cybernetic terms, as my biological father began the process of doing, but he was doing it more electronically. You really get to get some predictive models. I mean, I can explain a lot of things now that I couldn't before. Probably our biggest findings were in the areas of the input-output model, how people see things or hear things, either directly, indirectly, redirectedly, or misdirectedly. Who says it, how it's said, what's said, those are all important things. It's basically a lookup table that sits inside not that gray gooey stuff, but the brain in the vat. It's a fascinating topic. I thought I'd give a little quick introduction to it, and others are more familiar with my work at this point than even I am, because I've been focused on modern psychology for the last 6 years. Here I am back at the Saco train station, where I began on the other video. Across the river you can see there's a retirement home that never seems to have any lights on. Police station's right behind it. Nobody seems to notice. Over there, the Army recruiting station. Actually, that's a gray building, usually one of the few in town that actually has the heat visibly on. It's what we call a heat pylon. That's part of the sociology. How is it that people function? What is it they need in order to walk around and pretend nothing's going on? It's same old, same old. It's a very complicated subject. It gets into such issues as the Babylonian cuckoo clock, which we had the real fortune to study between 2007 and 2009 up close. And that allowed us to leg into modern psychology. We looked a lot at the id, which is actually a useful construct from Freud. Most of his stuff is not that great, but the id and the ego, they're useful concepts, although those aren't the old names for it. That's about it for now. I just want to give a quick introduction to what it is that you can expect to start to see come out as soon as we start to release it. This genius over there, number 20, he pretends to live in the mill, always cleaning stuff up right next to the orange. Oh, and my, there's the Salvation Army thing. Let me point out one thing about number 20. He's usually up getting the newspaper at 9:30. Today I'm here at 8:30, so guess where he is? He's here getting the newspaper. Here, let me show you. There's the time. Oh, it's 8:20 almost. He's off the clock. In other words, he's mine. Why is he here? We focus on what we call agenda conflict anomalies, where people do things that are non-habitual or breaking the laws or breaking bylaws or rules, and we look at the basic reasons for why they do it. Dig there, that's what we do. Let me point out one more thing. Hang on a second. I have some people trying to keep me out of trouble. I have technical glitches that happen and whatnot, because there's a lot of stuff I know that just shouldn't be out yet. So I shot a whole thing where nothing took. We had another agenda conflict anomaly. Somebody was trying to make me hurry up because I'm not sure. But as you can see, there's the Saco River behind me. We're now high up on the cliffs that used to be a barricade for the Indians against the wind. That's the river. It's a nice river. And there's the Salvation Army thing. And the reason that that's of note today as I talk is because it has to do with the concept of shame feeding. We realized as part of our research, both here, a couple of the really stupid acts around me where people were proving me wrong when I was right, and then walking down Preble Street in Portland one day past the druggies and all those people are going to help them and whatnot, that what was going on was they weren't shameless, they were actually shame feeding. In other words, they were happy because they were doing things that were wrong and either antisocial or asocial. This is a huge concept. We just had the scale wrong. Not shameless, or do you have no shame? It's why do you feed on doing the wrong thing? Why are you shame feeding? It's a very helpful concept for the future. Here I am at the park, the entrance to the falls on the north side. Somebody just preceded me. I'm not going to go through that. It's obviously needed civilization to pretend to function in order to be here and pretend it was a coincidence, and it isn't. It's part of the pattern of the usual stuff. Here are the falls at Saco Island. Right behind the dam, there is the falls. I guess there's just a short distance between the dam and the falls. You see a spillway over here. That's the east part of Saco Island over there. I'm actually in Saco now. Right near the railroad track by the swamp. One more thing I guess I should add is there's a selectivity to what people need in order to pretend the right way, whatever it is they think is right, that they have legitimacy. They really don't have much legitimacy at all. If you look at the full list, what they have is a form of selective checklists. They have something we eventually ended up calling crippled checklist dementia, and I wrote a piece on that. I can't think anyone around me basically for the last 15 years has had anything but that kind of a problem. They really can't deal with looking at the buildings and going, hey, the lights are off. How come the heat's off in the wintertime? They just can't do it at all. They shame feed on that. And if they can't shame feed on that, then what they do is they cross that out and find something, you know, that's less of a sin against humanity to shame feed on. That's the druggie act, going to get the paper at the wrong time and pretending that it's always been the right time. Because basically it's whenever I'm around, that's a troll that gets summoned and rings the bell. Or maybe I ring the bell and it shows up. Who knows? Panorama sweep from further up. You can see the dam. We're done for the day. And then you can see how high we up. Now that's downriver. We're down part of the island. You can just barely see it in the center of the screen. That was where the yellow dot was. So that's it, folks. Have a nice day. I'm sitting around out here in the woods. About to go walk over to the grocery store through the woods. It's usually a nice walk unless they gassed it today. They gassed most of the route on the way over here. What I wanted to point out is that what we look at, you know, in Main Street, USA, which is one of the reasons that Saco interested me, was moving to Main Street and taking a look at it. I hadn't even thought of that. I wanted to live out by the river in the middle of nowhere. But we started to look at Penny Lane. You know that song? I'm not even going to go through the lyrics, but it's basically, you know, a kiddie's view of what it is that people are supposed to act like in de minimis stereotypes. That's worth looking at, and one of my favorite songs to hum when the trolls pop out and start doing what they do is the syncopated clock, because obviously we're on some kind of a mechanical cuckoo clock, called the Babylonian cuckoo clock. That's all I wanted to add for now, and till the next video. And one more point that I wanted to add that I forgot about. On my way over here, I went to the post office, which never has the mail that gets put in the box or gets sent, all kinds of stuff missing in the mail. I don't really want to go into it, but it's been integral to our work. I can't get any mail that's really relevant to anything I ever did before 2000, and most of the stuff that I've done afterwards. I mean, I haven't even gotten a thank you note from anybody for what we did in Boston a month ago. And that was some pretty heavy duty stuff, and the cops should have been a lot nicer to me today than they were just driving past. Anyway, so I went to the post office. I get a couple of flyers from the supermarket. I get a cable company solicitation, and that's it. And that's a week or so of alleged mail. And then I walk out, and I'm going to go across the street. So I hit the button. The cars stop, and one of the women noted that something had fallen out of my hand. So I looked back, and what fell out of my hand was something that hadn't been in my hand. It was my mail about my CD at the bank. You know, how that got into my hand, the only possible explanation, because there's no such thing as worthless magic, was that I picked it out of the box and didn't notice it. From the bank, I would have noticed, but, you know, I guess I icky bum wrong again. It's another example of that. So I went back, I picked it up, it was from the bank. That's money, that makes it right, and in terms of the iconics of it, we haven't even gotten into iconics, and that's a whole other topic. I thought it was worth relating. But basically, it was a magically stuck piece of mail, addressed to me, by the way, fell on the ground, and it couldn't be magic because it was about money, and, you know, money's all earthly stuff. This is what angels do when they're really nasty and really bored. And what was the point? I almost forgot. There was a selectivity to the whole thing. The selectivity was she was obeying the law by stopping at the crosswalk. And the reason she stopped extra to show that she was really a nice person, with no help from any angel who couldn't possibly exist. It's a variation on Magic Fairy Light games. Was that she noticed that I dropped something. I hate that skit. They do it with money sometimes too. That's whenever they need to cross something out that's a real disaster. In this case, Saco just smelled like, oh my God, ISIS, STP, and everybody's gas tank up and down the streets.